Hello, and welcome to the Pragmatic Live podcast series, where we tackle the biggest challenges facing today's product management, product marketing, and other market and data-driven professionals with some of the best minds in the industry. I'm Rebecca Kalogeris, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Pragmatic Institute, and your host for this episode. Today, we're joined by Marcus Andrews, Principal Product Marketing Manager at HubSpot. And we're going to just kind of dig in as from a practitioner's view, feet on the street, how product marketing is handled at HubSpot. Welcome, Marcus.
Thank you very much for having me, Rebecca.
All right, first to give everybody some context, why don't you give us just that brief rundown of Marcus and how you got into product marketing?
Yes, my name is Marcus. I'm a principal product marketer here at HubSpot. I have been at HubSpot for a little over 4 years, and before that was at Google for 3 years in sort of a go-to-market role. And how I initially got started was I was working on the services team at a startup called Wildfire, and I moved into kind of a sales enablement role. This was probably 8 years ago, and I just started doing, I started doing the kind of work that looks a lot like product marketing today. So I was building decks. I was kind of telling the story of the product. I was working with sales teams in that way that, they would bring me into the pitch to kind of really bring a product to life. And that was around the time, I think, when I was like, oh, this is really interesting work. What is this field actually? And it was product marketing. It looked and it smelled like product marketing. So I moved into that in Google when the startup got acquired, and then 4 years ago joined HubSpot to really focus on that. So yeah, that's how I got into it, and I've been doing it for quite a while now.
Awesome. So one of the things in my role here at Pragmatic, and one of the things we see all the time, is that product marketing is not always the same company to company. So why don't you tell us a little bit about product marketing at HubSpot and what areas in particular your group is focused on?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we think about product marketing at HubSpot is that we are really here to sort of tell the story of the product. And HubSpot is an interesting company because probably around 5 years ago or a little bit after I joined, we really went through this big metamorphosis of being a really marketing and sales driven company to moving to be a product driven company. And so we had a really big investment in the product and the engineering teams around 4 years ago. And we introduced a freemium business line. We went from just being kind of a point solution to having a full suite of products to having a platform of products. And so all of this has happened over the last 4 years. And really the product marketing team has kind of evolved and been changing and adapting along this journey the whole time. But the core thing that we really do is that, we're marketers and we're in the marketing org, but we're aligned to different product teams and different product lines. And we really help bring the story of that product to life. And that could mean a number of things, but it mainly comes through in great product positioning and messaging, go-to-market plans, and product launches that we develop with the product teams and then bring to the larger marketing team and sort of turn into a launch event, into a bigger product story than it would be without us. And we really focus on, taking something that is kind of features and a combination of features and turning it into something that's really clear and defensible and interesting and a great campaign from a marketing perspective.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about how we go from feature speak to a product story or a brand story. What is your guys' process internally for that? It's a big question. It's a big role, but
no, we think a lot about it. So, the first thing that we do with product teams a lot, where I find myself getting more and more involved as years go by, is that I think there's always this question of, what are we launching? And I guess it's a packaging question. So, a feature will come out and it'll be interesting, but I think there's always a discussion to be had around can this be bundled with other features? Is there a bigger, more interesting story here to the market that we could tell that's outside of just this one feature? And I think that works pretty well, generally speaking. There may be a feature that comes out that's just amazing, and we can launch it, and it's interesting in and of itself. But for the most part, we'll start to combine things, and we'll tell a story that's larger than just the feature from a market level. So it taps into I think that the key to making a feature launch interesting is it has to tap into some larger narrative, into something that people just care about at a broader level. And as long as it's coming from, based in the product initially, you can tell a really great story that's product driven, and it can be interesting on this like higher level. It taps into like a larger narrative.
So how do you validate that story that you're building for a launch that it's the right one?
That's a great question. I mean, we should be more strategic. This is something where I think I wonder if a lot of the other product marketing teams I talk to, I think face some similar challenges. But research and just being as strategic as possible. The nice thing about HubSpot is we have great product teams with good user researchers and UX designers and product designers who will do a ton of customer interviews beforehand. So we generally know a lot about our target market and our customers going into something like this. Um, and then I think we look in the market for validation. I think we always want to tell an interesting and unique and differentiated story, but we don't want to just make it up. I think we're going out and we're looking to see what's happening in our space. I specifically work on our services line of products at HubSpot. So it's important for me to know, what are the trends and what are the big issues and what are people talking about events and conferences in this space. And I really, do that by talking to a lot of customers, reading a lot, going to conferences, watching talks, and just making sure that I'm well informed and I'm like my ear to the ground. Um, and then it's a lot of also research in terms of the, really understanding our audience, really understanding the market. And then maybe, more and more too, we've also started to do message testing. So we've got some researchers on our team who can do some cool kind of like multivariant message testing. So if we want to test a specific product name or a specific tagline, we can bring it to an audience of a few hundred or so, and pit different options versus each other. We'll save that for kind of larger launches. Um, but it's mostly just about being informed and doing your homework and really talking to customers and talking to the people you're trying to reach.
So it's a lot about the information you get up front that helped you build the messaging, less so about testing it right away. Though again, you do have options for bigger launches, which can combine both the qualitative and the quantitative approach to that, which I think is pretty exciting. Um, it's a great way of staying focused on being market driven.
Yeah. Yeah. To your point, though, there's definitely a lot you can do. A launch is usually a specific day or a specific week or, time frame, but often we'll start to introduce an idea into the market or like into our customer base beforehand. So if we know we want to talk about self-service solutions and, we've got a knowledge-based product that's launching, we can start writing about that and we can start building that into our, our content strategy months or quarters beforehand, and it'll help us understand what people are interested in, what people actually care about, what isn't working at all. And that's smart. We don't always do that, but it's a great point.
But I think you also make a good point about launches that in so many of today's when you have a platform as a product, you're releasing features regularly, constantly, sometimes on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Each one of those isn't necessarily a launch, right? There's sort of a difference between a release and a launch, and what you put together as a package story. How do you guys map those two together?
Yeah. So uh, that is 100% true at HubSpot. We have a big product team and they are constantly working on things. Um, and I think we've found over the years that you really do want to me at least, I think that when you have something that's really important, it's better to kind of save your launches and put a lot of effort into them versus having something come. I've seen some startups and some companies do a launch every week, for instance. And to me, it like is interesting and exciting at first, but then it just turns into noise pretty quickly. And you've kind of cried wolf too many times. It's like people are stop listening after a while. So I think there's a balance that's unique to kind of every company for that. For us, it's a lot of our marketing team too. And so we want to activate, when we do a launch, we want our entire marketing team activated. We found that if we can get everybody aligned and all the vectors pushing in the same direction, rowing in the same direction for a launch, you can have a huge impact. But to do that, there's really only support for that, bandwidth to do one of those a quarter. Probably we can do one all-in massive launch a quarter and have 100% buy-in. So we would rather do that than try and fit in three or four and only get kind of buy-in. So for us, we have that kind of built-in prioritization system there, and it just kind of forces you to also then be more strategic. So your product team could come to you and say, "Hey, we've got this really exciting launch that's happening in this month." And I can come back to them and I can say, "All right, what if you combine those two launches you're talking about? We tie it into this more interesting narrative, and then we have more buy-in for that to do a larger campaign for the quarter." And that's always really effective. um, so I think that's one component, and then the other component is just the impact of the feature, the announcement of the launch. Which is usually like revenue impact, how many users it's going to affect, kind of the opportunity sizing of it was something that we're trying to get better at to help us prioritize how we address that issue.
And what metrics do you guys use, or do you guys use metrics to kind of determine which launches were the most successful?
Most successful, yeah. I mean, usually there's a revenue number attached to everything we do. Not necessarily. We have a free product, which is super important, and then it's more of a like free user acquisition. Um, but usually there's this bump that we see whenever we do a campaign that's been pretty consistent in my time here. Usually there's like a benchmark of a good product marketing launch will equal like a certain amount of pop, call it like 100% increase over the like current numbers that you have. So for us, it's mostly benchmark. We try and benchmark our launches. And so, because not everyone is the same. Some will have more revenue, more of a revenue number. Some will be a user number. Some may be, it's an awareness thing that we're trying to do. But we try and look at benchmarks across the launches and then say, all right, if this is the benchmark of a good launch, let's compare it to how the current one we've done is working out, and then see where it nets out. So it's hard because the metrics that we're tracking for each launch can be tough, but they're typical metrics. It's revenue, it's users acquired, it's reach, it's users activated. Those kind of numbers we try and benchmark and then compare campaigns against each other.
So as part of your launch plan too, then do you have a sort of sales enablement and sales training piece of it that your group handles?
Yeah, absolutely. So recently, we've got a few people who look after that full time, who are closer to the sales team, people who sort of came up through the ranks of the sales team. Um, but absolutely, they're a really important partner for us. So we put together I put together sort of a plan with that team. So when a launch happens of a certain scale, there's things that they expect from us and things that we expect from them. So from us, it's usually like a lot of it is really driven by good video now. So it's good internal training videos, demo videos that they can use that can hopefully be turned that easily used as an external resource for the sales and service team, and then also just really clear information around pricing and packaging. I think HubSpot's now a multi-suite kind of platform company. The challenge a lot of the time is just like, how do we make this extremely clear for the sales and service teams, like how this impacts the details of different packages, and how pricing works and that sort of stuff. Um, so we supply them with that information. I really like to get involved in team meetings and trainings and that sort of stuff, and talk to the sales and service teams too. But yeah, usually we kind of supply them with that information, and then they bring those out to the sales and service team via the trainings and materials and like mechanisms that they've built to help get the team ready.
You said that on the flip side that you guys had expectations from them for a launch. What do those look like?
Yeah, so those really are around keeping kind of the external pitch materials up to date. So that's another big challenge. Is I think probably a lot of product marketers and sales enablement people face is that I think the sales team really leans on us for good communication materials, but they're often like very quickly out of date. And so I think whenever there's a new launch, it's like you got to go through, you got to make sure the core things are updated, whether they're product pages or pricing pages or one pagers or internal resources. So that's one component of it. The other is just really like good, clean information. And so, um, you know, they will have a lot of questions usually, especially the sales engineering teams. I always like to um, take all of the information and as a first step, get it out to our sales engineers because they will ask every single question that has ever been thought of as related to the pricing and packaging or product details. And we use that as a way to just kind of pressure test it. And then we've got really good, clean information. So those are two big things. There's also, depending on the launch, could be like a product explainer video or a piece of brand content. Uh, just depending on the launch, but usually it's those two things. It's external pitch resources and then pricing and packaging information.
Well, and I would think that the quarterly launches aren't only because you get fatigue in the market if you have continual launches, but I actually think it can be very hard for the sales team as well, right? To get their attention, to keep them up to date if we're just constantly releasing new things to them. Um, they're running trying to hit their numbers and build the revenue. I think that can be hard on them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think we see that just like the marketing team and the sales team and the service team are very similar. They've got so much going on that if you can space things out, it helps them, but also you can get them way more excited if you say, look, this is the one thing that we're doing this quarter, and we're going to give you a ton of direction, a ton of focus, and everything you need to make this happen. uh, you get that kind of alignment, especially when it starts at the leadership level. And you've got sales and marketing and service all aligned with whatever the product is building. Then you're really product driven, and you're really going to have a big impact with the launch and the product and the campaign.
So at HubSpot, are the marketing communications resources sort of a shared resources that are outside of product marketing group, or are they within the product marketing?
Um, what do you mean exactly? The communication
like
resources?
like the marketing execution resources, are those part of your product marketing team, or are they a separate team that is a partner for you guys as you build out collateral and programs?
Yeah, so we have a ton of partner teams in our marketing org. So we've got a big marketing team, and that includes, communication team, a customer marketing team, design resources, social media team. We have our HubSpot Academy team, which sits in marketing, and so all of these are partner teams for us. And usually when we have one of these, P1 launch is kind of the highest priority. There's already alignment from leadership, um, but generally we work with these teams to kind of we'll work with product, put together the plan, put together messaging, creative concepts, all the research, and then we do sort of this roadshow element where we'll go out to those teams, get them excited, brief them, and then they're doing the actual creative work or writing the press releases and that sort of thing.
And so that's exactly the question I was going to get to, is that what do you guys use to hand off all of that sort of product knowledge and market contacts that you guys have on your team to some of those partner teams? So it sounds like you do a roadshow. Do you have documents that you use? Is there like a product brief or a launch brief or a campaign brief that you use to kick those off?
Yeah, so there's always a sort of a launch plan and launch document, and included in that is all of the at least the findings and insights from the research that we've done. There's goals that we've set with the product team. There is the messaging and positioning that we've built. There's information around the target market. So there's a tight brief that has everything that you would need as a customer marketing team, hopefully, or whatever team, to build everything that you were going to build to support the campaign. Uh, so that yes, that doc. There's always a doc for those launches, which is very helpful. The wiki, we have a wiki that we use internally, which is super helpful for those launches as well, which usually mirrors a doc like that, but it's probably a little bit simpler and has a little bit of more information for the broader company. We use Loom a lot as a tool. So, let's say we need to brief a team, especially globally, or people, who have like a larger team where it's harder to reach them, and we want to do it asynchronously so that we can send them something that they can watch in their own time. We'll do a Loom. Those work especially well for demoing the product or walking someone through positioning. Like a lot of the time, the that launch doc will include a deck with the messaging or a memo with the messaging. Um, so we use Loom as a tool. We definitely use Docs. And then I think what's most effective is, going to team meetings. That still works really, really well, just as part of a roadshow. So basically, making the rounds to all the different directors on the marketing teams and talking to them and their teams, and just giving them a chance to ask questions and really absorb it and understand it is works really well. Yeah, and then when we do get into kind of the launch cadence, we'll also often work with a project manager from the product team. I don't know how many product marketing teams do this, but me personally, I'm not a great project manager. It's just not. I was just wasn't born with it. So it's really nice to have someone who can come in with, real project management experience and run kind of the launch project cadence. That's another great resource that we use. And then there's always some sort of like weekly meeting or bi-weekly meeting once we really get into the launch. Um, once we get really close to the launch date, that really helps keeps the teams aligned. So those are kind of the different tools and mechanisms we use.
Right. And then, so you've been there 4 years.
Yep.
What in that time, I'm sure you guys continue to evolve and tighten up your launch processes. Is there one thing that in that 4 years that you discovered or that you added to it that you think was just really then a key part as to why you've had successful launches?
Um, this is a great question. I mean, I think the the biggest thing, I don't know if this is a lame answer, but I mean, the biggest thing is probably just focus and alignment, especially as we've grown. um, it's just so important to have, the team and your window of kind of opportunity and all the resources that you have aligned. So we've figured out different ways of doing that, and it changes almost every year. But at first, when I joined, it was a bit of every team is kind of doing their own thing, and we're going to have a ton of stuff going on all the time. Uh, and that becomes pretty unsustainable really quickly as you grow and get bigger. So we have figured out ways to just get way more organized and just really prioritize the things that we launch and the stories that we tell. And that has helped in a huge way. We have our inbound conference every year, which is where we launch the majority of where we do a lot of launches. And so that becomes kind of the focal point of the year for launches, but we launch at other times too. But the way that we prioritize for that and how we kind of go into that season, and focus has been the one thing that I think has just really, really helped our marketing team, our product team, and HubSpot in general.
You guys just did inbound like in the last couple of weeks, yes?
Yeah, yep, it was last week. So
Oh, are you recovering? Are you okay?
yeah, I took Monday off, which was a nice way to catch my breath. But yeah, it was a super great event. We had a wonderful year. This year is bigger than ever. We launched a lot of products. So it was great. Were you there, or was anybody from the team?
Not from our team, but one of our partners that we work with really closely. He was there, so he was telling me a little bit about it. He always gives me a good download, and I always want to go since I'm from Boston. I'm going to get there.
Yeah, you got to come sometime. It's a blast.
Yes. Any big takeaways from not to flip conversations completely, but any big takeaways from the conference this year?
Yeah, I mean, from a product perspective, this year it was really just about solving for the customer. I think probably the last 2 years, we've just launched more products than ever. It has been just we're in the stage where the product and the suites have expanded so quickly, that it's been, it's a lot for customers to download. It's a lot for our partners to download. It's a lot for us internally to download. And so this year has been way more about like, all right, let's not launch lots of good products. Let's launch, great things, and let's make what we have even better. And it was really good for us, I think, as a way to just kind of refocus on the customer and the customer experience and really align on the things that are going to make HubSpot better. Like, HubSpot needed to be faster, and it needed to have better organizational systems, and the free tools needed to do more and be more usable and more user friendly. And those aren't always the things that I think as a product marketer you want to stand up and scream about, but they're super important, and our customers care about them tremendously. So um, I think it's smart to use a year to focus on stuff like that every once in a while. And that's what we did this year. So that was really kind of the focus for us.
And I think that's true, right? It's not as sexy a story to be like, and now we've gotten rid of some technical debt, right? But it is really important. And if you don't do that and you just keep adding new things on top of that, that deficit and the debt really gets more burdensome on the customer. So I think that's a very smart thing. And I think sometimes doing less but doing it better is a really good way to improve your products and support your customers.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, it's tough as a marketer. I think you always want to be, you know, talking about what's new and interesting and exciting. But yeah, it's not always what the your customers are interested in, or it's not always what's best. And yeah, I think you're totally right. Doing less things better is really important.
Yeah, I remember we were fixing one thing at a previous software company I worked with, and I was like, "What am I supposed to do for a release day? Like this feature no longer sucks." Like, I mean, it was hard, but it was such a difference when we fixed it. It's just not quite as compelling a story.
Yep, definitely. Well, I mean, your users will care though. It's
Yes.
funny how I think we put folders and workflows, and how excited some people were about folders and workflows really blew my mind. So, the people who really care or who use it a lot really care. So,
Well, and I think in certain products, and I think HubSpot is one of them, it's such a user word of mouth, community grown product that, and really today more and more with all products, you have to take care of those first. That is what is going to bring the new customers. Those kind of things that alleviate their stress points makes them bigger advocates and more vocal advocates of your product.
totally. No, it's very true. And like, I think, yeah, I mean, today, every industry is so driven by word of mouth and online reviews, and that like social proof is what people are looking for online. And yeah, it's just a big competitive advantage if you can build your base of advocates and people who really love your product. And but what we've seen a lot of recently too is that part of the way we've grown over the last 3 or 4 years is that someone will leave a job, someone will have used HubSpot at an agency, and then they will go in house to a startup, and the question will come up of what CRM should we use, what marketing automation system should we use, what help desk should we use, and the people who've been using HubSpot, in the past and had a good experience with it, it's a no brainer for them to use HubSpot again. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is just another way of like, you've got to solve for your customers and really got to focus on them. But it's amazing to hear stories about people who are kind of taking HubSpot with them because they've had such a good experience. So uh, it's just another reason to really focus on that.
I have to say, of all the sort of big three marketing CRM, and there's probably more, but the big three that I think about, HubSpot fans are truly the ones who are most passionate, right? The rest are like, yeah, it's good, I like it, it's okay, I could use either one, it doesn't really matter. But HubSpot fans are like, no, no, it's this one. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's a good sign. You're doing good things over there. That means.
Yeah, it's great. That is the kind of when we hear that too, it gets us fired up. So glad you've heard that as well.
Yes. All right, Marcus, we've talked a lot about a lot of different things today. If you could get our listeners to do two things differently tomorrow based on what we talked about today, what would that be?
All right. So the first, if you're a product marketer, if you're a marketer in general, I think we're really in this world of like everything you do has to have the voice of the customer in it. And I think I came to this realization when I started working on our services product. But today, your customers are your best marketers. And if you, as a marketer, don't have the voice of the customer built into your product pages and your launches and everything you do, your marketing is just not going to land as well as it did a few years ago. I think people today are I think trust is at kind of an all-time low today, and people are very weary of marketing. And every marketer on the planet is saying the same things. They're saying our service is great, our product is great, and people look to your customers to try and cut through that noise. And I just think it's still a big advantage. So, if you can tell more customer stories, if you really can focus on your customers and the customer experience, and then turn them into advocates and build them into your brand marketing, build them into your launch campaigns, you're going to be more successful. So that is I've been on this kick for the last 6 months, a year, and I just think it's super important. I've been trying to do it more. We're trying to do it more at HubSpot. So that would be my first. And then my second would probably be that, We were talking about it today, and maybe it's just because we were talking about it, but I think the more you can prioritize your launches, the more that you can, regardless of size of your company, the more that you can get everybody involved, everybody rallied around a product launch, that hopefully combines lots of smaller features into a larger story that connects with a larger narrative, and then take the time to do an amazing launch, maybe over the course of a quarter. Um, but that alignment and focus and getting everybody on your team kind of rowing in the same direction just has a huge impact. And sometimes it's easy to, you can move faster if you do all of this stuff on your own and do more work yourself. But just the impact you can have when leadership and your whole marketing team, your whole sales team, your whole product team is bought into one big launch, it'll just 10x. It'll be bigger than anything you've done before. So takes longer. It can be a little bit frustrating at times, but the impact you'll see from it is just huge. So I definitely recommend that as
So I have to say, encouraging people to be market driven and to think about launches strategically are definitely two things that I can get behind and
well. All right.
Pragmatic can get behind. So 100% agree with those two items, Marcus.
Awesome. And take the pragmatic product marketing course.
I mean, if you want to add a third one, that's a great one. All right. Thank you, Marcus, so much for joining us today.
Awesome. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Rebecca.
All right. That does it for today's episode. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And don't forget to join us next week when we tackle another great topic designed to help you elevate your product, your company, and your career.